Okay, folks, we're just letting a few people in. Welcome to your first biannual uh, College of Political Knowledge. We'll be letting just a handful more folks in as we proceed here. So we'll give people another minute or so, but we know time is valuable for everyone here. So we want to ensure that our speaking public, our speakers can interact with the public as much as possible on this front. We'll give it another 5 seconds here. And before we do any level of introductions, I think what we'll do is we will, first of all, I'm just going to say on behalf of the Boulder Chamber, I want to thank everyone for joining us for the 2026 first even numbered year College of Political Knowledge as we embark on a new form of democracy here in Boulder, Colorado. I also want to thank Amy Walker and Sophia for their help behind the scenes as we progress here. None of this happens by itself. And thanks to Maya and our events team as well, and Courtney with our marketing, and as well as the folks at Lorikeet for getting the word out and making sure that people are aware of this. This will not just be recorded for quality assurance, but also be recorded so other individuals can be able to make access of this if they were not able to be here tonight. But for those of you who are here tonight, thank you, our audience, for attending as well. I'm Jonathan Singer. I'm the Senior Director of Policy Programs here with the Boulder Chamber. And with the College of Political Knowledge, we could not do this without our sponsors as well. And so a extra special thanks to W.W. Reynolds Companies for being the sponsor of College of Political Knowledge, as well as our policy partners who play an integral role in being able to help us with our efforts to advocate for our members. So thanks to CRL, Seawald Hampling, Squire Patton Boggs, Greenlight Strategies, Ignition Strategy Group, and Onsite for their diligent work as well. With that being said, we are off to the races, as it were, with the College of Political Knowledge. And uh, for those of you who do have questions, be aware that we will have an opportunity later on for you to be able to ask questions in the chat section of the Zoom. With that being said, we are going to move to our first panel pretty quickly. And I want to invite our wonderful folks here at the City of Boulder. Uh, Alicia, John, thank you for joining us because what is lawmaking about if we don't have laws to follow? And those first laws are, in fact, our campaign finance laws and our elections laws to make sure that our elections run freely, fairly, and transparently. And so, Alicia and Mr. Morse, Ms. Johnson, and if you have anyone else from your city staff that you would like to bring up, Sarah, I believe you're also on the bubble, as it were. If we can have you join us in the corner here, and when you're ready with your slide panel, we'll start there.
All right, Jonathan, do you want us to introduce ourselves or do you want us to just flow into it?
Well, why don't I start with this and say that our illustrious city clerk Alicia Johnson, with a crack team of experts, John Morse, who is a phenomenal repository of information on all things elections, as well as Sarah Geiger, all provide wonderful information. And this is the beginning of the conversation, not the end of the conversation. This is an incredibly accessible staff that is there to help and to ensure not only that it's free and fair, but is in fact accessible as well. So thank you for your time and attention and also being available for us here today.
That was perfect. Thank you so much. And I'll go ahead and start and have John bring up our slides. Thank you again, everyone, for attending tonight's session. And we hope that the information we are going to provide as your all things point persons and people with the City of Boulder on elections for the 2026 municipal election. Next slide, please, John. We do want to note as part of our information that I am, of course, the city clerk. John is the elections administrator. And then we do have a lot of information on our website. We just wanted you to be aware that you have several areas of point of contact so you can obtain information. Please do not hesitate to reach out to John or I if you have any further questions after our presentation. Next slide, please. So we want to start at the basics because there are people that have never ran for council or an elected office, and they basically want to know, okay, where do I start? So we thought that the information related to if you're qualified would be the perfect place because as Jonathan said, we want to be effective and we want to be transparent, but we also want to be efficient. So the best thing to do is to read the information that we have on the website, but to simplify it, you are wondering if you're qualified to run. So, to become a candidate for council or mayor, you sign an actual nomination petition form. And this information regarding the form and why it's needed is contained in our Home Rule Charter Section 27. And then with that, you would need to affirm before you sign it that you are a registered elector in the city of Boulder. You cannot run for any elected office in the city of Boulder if you are not registered in the city of Boulder. You must be will not be less than 21 years of age. So in other words, what I was getting ready to say, and my brain is moving slow, is you have to be 21 years of age on the date of the election. So even if you are saying, that you're registering and you're 20 and you'll be 21, say in October, you still can be a candidate because the election is held in November. You also will have to have been a resident of the city of Boulder for 1 full year immediately prior to the election. That is an important part because we have had some people come and register and they had only lived in the city for 8 months. So you have to have completed a year cycle of residency before you can be considered for a candidate. Now, also note that you're not eligible for candidacy if you have previously been elected to 3 or more terms of office. Next slide, John. So we did have some changes in the election process that was put forth by the electors. And so with this 2026 election, the city of Boulder will complete its transition to even year elections for all municipal candidate elections. And so that adjusts the terms that were currently outlined in the previous years to go back to their normal terms. So the term length for the city council members elected will return to 4 years this year. And for mayor, it will be 2 years. Now, also note that you cannot run for more than one office. So you can't run for mayor and council. And that is because of the campaign finance rules. But sitting council members can run for mayor. Now, if they are elected, the code provides that the fifth winner of the council race will replace that member. Next slide, John. So are the elected seats paid positions? Yes, they are. Currently, the mayor and council member salaries are the same. They are currently at $15,426.27 annually. And that is based on a per meeting basis. But in November of 2024, the Section 7 of the city charter was amended, and commencing upon the swearing in date of the council members in December of this year after this election, the compensation for members of the city council shall be as follows. For the mayor, it is 50% of the area median income. And for all other council members, it's 40% of the area median income. Now, council compensation shall be adjusted annually, beginning, like I said, January the 1st is when it'll be adjusted on a regular basis. And it's based on the area median income calculation for the previous year and averaged over the calendar year. Compensation shall be paid on the same schedule as city employees or such other schedule as determined by the city manager. We do also want to note that although members of the city council are generally not considered city employees, council members may elect to receive benefits under the same terms and conditions that are available to full-time city employees, including, without limitation, participation in city health, vision, dental, and life insurance plans. Next slide, please. So, how do I get certified as a candidate? The process begins on Tuesday, January 4th, and runs through Monday, August 24th of this year. Now, the first step is to go online and complete the intent to run form. And what that does is triggers an email to us, and then we prepare your nomination petition and make an appointment for you to come in, take the oath, and sign your petition. Now, the petition requirements are 25 and no more than 35 signatures of the City of Boulder electors. You may sign your own petition, and that seems to be something that most candidates do, be the first one to sign their own petition. Now, we will validate the voter registrations of the signers as the petitions come in. So if you don't know, now there is a new provision with the changes that were implemented that you can now take your petition out of the city municipal building. You're not required to have it signed in front of the city clerk or their staff, and you can take it home, take it out to the community, have your signing parties, whatever you would like to do to reach your constituents to get those signed. And so that is one of the things that we have heard from the last election that worked very well because it got the candidates gave the candidates an opportunity to interact with the constituents and and discuss some of their concerns with them at the same time that they were signing the petition. So again, we will validate the voter registrations of the signers as the petition comes in. But so as soon as you get those 25 to 35 signatures, you can get it back to us. We'll verify the signatures and then we will verify your candidacy and your name will be placed on the November 3rd ballot for the office that you are seeking. Next slide. So once you get certified, what happens? So I'm going to turn this over to John because he's going to go over the campaign finance rules and the next steps regarding registering your committees and your getting you set up for your accounts. And he'll go over a few of those provisions. John, thank you.
All right. Thank you, Alicia. Thank you, Jonathan, in the chamber for letting me speak one more time on an even year for the first time. I'm the elections administrator and your first point of contact for campaign finance and running for office. So once you've been certified and got your amount of signatures you need, the first thing you need to do is form your committee and you'll file a report. So things to think about with this is you're going to want to have a team around you. Our elections are quite demanding, especially our reporting. So we ask that you do have like a treasurer, a or a campaign manager, and people around you to help kind of keep things in order as you go through our election process. Um, so with that, we do have a campaign finance portal that I'll help you with to log in, to report all your expenditures, your contributions, and your reports there. It's pretty straightforward. Um, and then we will also ask that you have a financial interest disclosure for us, which I'll again provide a form for you to talk about any financial ties you may have and have transparency in our elections, of course. Another good opportunity we have in September is a Channel 8 filming for all our candidates. So this is essentially an opportunity for all our candidates to speak about their manifesto, their goals for their campaign and what they look to accomplish, and then kind of help get the word out. So we assist with that, and our Channel 8 team is great there. And I think that's it for that slide. Next slide here is our election guidelines. So this is available online right now. I would call this the Bible for Boulder elections. A lot of great information in there to talk about important dates for running, rules we have around campaign activities, campaign reporting, and committee information
for both your official candidate committees, unofficial, and ballot measure committees. So it's a very comprehensive document that we put a lot of work in and very informative. So I encourage everyone interested in forming a committee or running for council to kind of get yourself well versed in that document. And feel free to reach out with any questions there. So this is an important slide. I'll hammer this one home, is that we do have contribution limits for our candidates. It is $100. That is a cumulative amount. So a person can make multiple contributions to a candidate, as many as they want, as long as it does not exceed $100 in total. So that's our cap. This does include monetary, of course, but then in addition to that, we have in-kind contributions. So this is goods and services. If someone donates a cake or helps pay for materials for your election, that's part of a contribution, and again is part of the $100 limit. So it cannot exceed that. So very, very important that you adhere to that, and we pay very close attention to make sure that you stay within those limits. Second thing here is anonymous contributions. So our code dictates that official candidate committees and unofficial candidate committees are not allowed to retain anonymous contributions. So in the event that does happen, no need to freak out or anything like that. I'm happy to help guide you through how best to disperse of those contributions and how to properly record it. But just to make sure that, again, we have full transparency in our elections, you cannot retain anonymous contributions. Moving forward, so Boulder, of course, we're very unique in many facets, but in elections, we're one of the few cities in the state that has a matching funds program. So this is a great opportunity that in the past most candidates take advantage of. I mean, it's free money coming from the city to help fund your campaign. Now, with that, it does entail a legal contract and things you have to agree to. And foremost is your expenditure limit. So if you do decide to take money from the city to help your campaign this year, the amount that your campaign can spend is $24,731. So it's a pretty significant amount of money there. There's a few things in order to qualify for matching funds that you have to meet. So first is 10% of the expenditure limit. Right now, that's looks like that figure may need to be updated, but it's 2,473. Sorry for that typo there. We adjust it every year. It's based on the consumer price index, so it goes up a little bit each year. And then the second part of that is that as a candidate, if you do take matching funds, you can only spend 20% of your own money on your campaign, which is 4,946. So one thing I want to make clear here is that we did say, hey, you can only have $100 contributions, but that is for people that are not the candidate. As a candidate yourself, you can spend more on your campaign than $100. If it's while you're receiving matching funds, the cap is 4,946. If you decide not to receive matching funds, then there is not a limit for candidates to spend on their own money or on their own accord for their campaign. The last point here, second to last, excuse me, is the maximum amount that the city will match. So the city's going to match 50% of your expenditure limit. So that's for this year, it's $12,366. So again, a pretty significant chunk of change that the city will help with your campaign. So a great opportunity for those and to help kind of level the playing field for candidates in the campaign process. And then the last part here for matching funds is that you can only accept contributions from a natural person. All right, moving on. Disclosures. So this is a biggie. When you start getting your signs ready, your website and other election materials, we're gonna pay close attention, as well as the community is very great about enforcing other people if they have the correct disclosures on their materials. So make sure you have your paid for by disclosure and then followed by your committee name, whether that, for example, for me, it'd be John Morse for Boulder, so paid for by John Morse for Boulder Committee, just for an example. And then our code is going to outline some of the requirements in terms of font size. If you have a video, we have some rules on how long it needs to appear on the screen, how large it needs to be, and things of that matter. So we have our code cited here to help kind of guide you along. So feel free to reach out if any of that doesn't make sense, but it's outlined pretty clearly in our code. Um, and then, yep, okay. Moving along here. So let's say all things go your way, you got picked, the city of Boulder likes you, and you've been elected. So now what happens? Um, there is a very arduous onboarding process. As Alicia mentioned, it's very much similar to being a full-time employee with the city. So we're going to help with your onboarding by getting you access to buildings, access to all our systems, emails, phone, benefits. It's a lot to take in. So Alicia and her team are going to help kind of facilitate that. This can be done pretty shortly after the election. One thing to note is that while the election is November 3rd, Boulder County does have a period where they audit the election to make sure everything's legitimate and went as it should have. So in that period, we're kind of waiting to see how things go. Usually takes a couple weeks after the election, and then we'll reach out to the candidates that were selected once they've been verified by the county and the election's been certified to help with onboarding. So another part of our onboarding is going to be council pictures that we do every year in one of Boulder's very beautiful scenic backgrounds. And then there will also be a council lunch. Moving along, the first meeting is actually 1 month following the election. It's going to be on December 3rd this year, Thursday, and that's where you'll swear in as a new council member. So exciting day. And you'll have your first business meeting. Following that, there is an annual retreat. This is done in quarter 1 of the following year, and it's a 2-day event. So it's kind of a little bit of a kumbaya among the new council members to get to know each other. And then most importantly with this is where council establishes their priorities for the next 2 years. So when you think about things that you're campaigning on, promises that you're making and things you're looking to achieve, this is the moment where council members come together and compromise, usually on hopefully 10 or so. We try to keep it in a reasonable amount of time of things that council wants to achieve, and this is done in conglomeration with city staff. So we get a picture of what council wants to accomplish in the next 2 years, and this is because every 2-year elections now. So following in 2028 will be a new set of council priorities established. So um, great time and very much a good again kumbaya among council members to help decide on what the city is going to do moving forward. So Thursdays are the big day. If you're running for council, just plan on your Thursday nights being taken or busy. So if you like Thursday night football, maybe I don't know, this isn't the job for you, but no, I'm just kidding. Uh, Thursday nights are the busy nights. First and third Thursdays are regular meetings. And second and fourth Thursdays are going to be study sessions. I will add that it is common for council to sometimes change study sessions to regular meetings or special meetings, excuse me. And this can be done in person or virtual. And I'll add that too. Generally, our regular meetings on the first and third are in person, and our study sessions are virtual. If you're out of town, thankfully, the city does have options, or maybe if you're sick and just don't want to spread your germs, we do have virtual options for meetings. And so another good opportunity if you're unable to make it in person. And then the last point here on the months that we do have a fifth Thursday, they typically aren't meetings. We try our best not to have meetings on our fifth Thursdays, but occasionally we know the workload that Boulder demands and the many things happening in the community. Sometimes it is possible that on that fifth Thursday there could be a meeting. Not listed in this slide, there are a few breaks in the calendar year for council members. So we have our spring break. This usually aligns with the Boulder Valley School District in March. So you have a couple weeks off or a week off there. And then we have a summer break too. So typically the end of June going through most of July will also be another break. So there are times in the year where you're are optimal to take vacation and things of that nature, so we don't make you work continuously throughout the entire year. Moving along here, I guess that's the last slide. So with that, I'll let the crowd
Wonderful.
open it up.
Well, John, thank you so much. And you know, we just a couple of highlights for folks so we have them off the top of our head. First of all, if you didn't know what area median income, you're going to be hearing a lot of that if you become elected to city council. And AMI does change, but you're moving up from about 15,000 a year as mayor right now to about 50,000 a year. And so it is a big difference. And look, it was the Thursday night football that really kept me away from running for city council. Once you play for the Broncos, you've got it. They would never have me. So we do see some questions in the chat, though. And so let's take a few questions before we move to our next panel. I did see well, I saw it and then it disappeared. Let's go back to it here. Oh, yes. So we have a question here. If you don't take the city match, can you spend more than $24,000?
Happy to take that one, Alicia. So if you're not receiving matching funds, you as a candidate do not have a contribution limit for yourself. And that's only you, no one else. You as a candidate can spend as much as you desire on your own campaign when you do not receive matching funds.
Great question. Also, yes, you do have to be 21. No 18-year-olds have gotten fake IDs to run for office yet, but and not that I would encourage that, but
Hey,
we'll
John,
keep our.
John, just to be clear too, you still are the other folks contributing can only give $100. Is that true?
That's correct, John.
Yeah, good. Just
Thank
want
you.
to make sure that's clear.
And it's 21 by the date of the election.
I kept my eyes closed on that on my 21st birthday, trust me. So other questions, if not, if there aren't questions in the chat, what we'll do is you can feel free to hold off on those. We're going to go to our next panel because we're going to move from what it takes to run and govern. And I'm really excited to bring our next panel up and have some longstanding and also relatively freshly minted lawmakers join us here. So I want to thank Rob Kaplan, Mark Wallach, and Matt Benjamin, our city council members who are not currently running for office. At the Boulder Chamber, we don't endorse candidates, but we do appreciate their participation. And then also our city manager, Nuria Rivera Vandermine. We've figured as important and as exciting as it is to run for office and make sure that you've checked all the boxes. Once you actually start serving, there's a slightly different skill set that's required. And so we were glad to have our city manager come here and speak as well. So I am going to go in order of who I see on the screen first, and I would be remiss in mentioning this because the first person I see is our former mayor, Leslie Durgin, former employee at the Boulder Chamber as well, and thought leader on many of the issues that we've faced here in Boulder over the decades. And so, Mayor Durgin, I'm going to queue it up. I put a few questions out there for our panel, but really this is what I want people to think about is number one, if you could only tell the audience one thing about what it takes to run for office or govern, what would it be? And then feel free to take the next 2 or 3 minutes to expound on that. Talk a little bit more about what it takes to run and why this is so important.
Thank you, Jonathan. Thanks to everybody who's here. I think one of the most important things and as you move from candidate to governance is to be fair and balanced and consider all perspectives. As a candidate, you're often expected to have a platform or things that you advocate or stand for. And your role really changes when you get on council, in that you need to consider all different perspectives and points of view. In Boulder, we do not have districts or wards, which is often a question about the way we govern, and is that the right way to do it? My answer is yes, because it forces you to think about the entire community, not a neighborhood or a district. And I think that really that is one of the biggest challenges, as you sit behind the desk and realize you have a different responsibility, a different role. Lots of fun, and certainly that's what you're running for. But to move the cat. Sorry,
Pro
guys.
feline policy. We like it.
I tell you, this cat loves to be on screen. I apologize for that. Violet, no, here she comes. But really to look at the roles and responsibilities of a elected official somewhat differently than as a candidate. One of the questions Jonathan had identified was what made each of us run for city council, and in my case for mayor as well. When I was on council, the mayor was selected by the city council. That's changed. So it was a little different process and somewhat different kind of platform that you had to have in running. I initially got on city council because my career has been largely in health and human services administration and policy. It was at that time quite unusual for a city to have such a healthy and robust commitment to human services and to providing those kinds of programs for people in need in our community. Not all cities do that. And so that's the reason that I decided to run for city council, is to make sure that that perspective was retained on council. Jonathan, any other
Yeah.
question you want me to address?
Well, no, I love what you had to say about fairness. And really that is a unique thing. And also pointing out that these are at-large seats. And, I'm going to follow up with one insider question for you before we go to our next person. And then we'll take questions from all of you as a panel. Um, you mentioned that you run at large. Um, this year's a little different, though. You're going to see more people voting because it's an even-numbered year election. Um, how do you think that would change how you might have campaigned when you ran and won?
Interesting. Um, I think that this year is going to be a particular challenge because this election is down ballot and it's a long ballot. And a lot of us that are working on electoral issues right now or on campaigns or whatever are very concerned about people going all the way down to vote in a city election. And so I think it would have changed for me in campaigning, in educating people about the importance of going all the way through the ballot, and that this is the first time that the city election will be so far down. So I think it would have been a more educational campaign than focusing on what I hope to bring as an elected official and in serving the community.
And if you had your cat with you when you were running, what do you think your margin of victory would have been?
I think it would have been even more stunning.
All right. Well, we're going to move on to our next speaker. I want to welcome arguably our longest serving council member at this point, at this specific juncture right now, a council member who has really brought a perspective from the East Coast, which I appreciate, and someone who is thinks about fairness, interacts with everyone, but also says what's on your mind. And so, Council Member Mark Wallach, tell us what's on your mind about running for office. What is the one takeaway that you would want our listening audience to take away today? And then feel free to expand on that for 2 or 3 minutes here.
Well, thank you for the nice introduction. If you're going to run, have a reason. It, this is not a job of great glamour. There are not that many perks that one can speak of. You need to have a rationale and a reason for running. If it's just, that seems like a nice thing to do, why don't I do it? It's probably not a good enough rationale to get into the fray. Campaigning is an enormous amount of work, and it's going to get harder, as Leslie said, as we are a down ballot election, and it is going to be harder and harder for council members to grab the attention of the voters who are going to be focused on other more prominent elections. So if it was hard before, I think it's going to get harder now. And when you get elected, assuming you do, it is also, if you're going to do the job well, uh, a ton of work. Um, you end up with large packets, although the packets are getting better, um, large packets of material to read on a weekly basis. And you barely get through one and have a meeting, and then you've got to address next week's. So there's not a lot of let up. And again, if you don't have something that is burning inside you to do this, a reason to do it, an issue that is grabbing you, that you really want to address, it's probably not a very useful thing to do for your own happiness. And so that's the thought process I would urge everyone to have in considering whether to run. Are you prepared to do the enormous amount of work in campaigning, which is going to get harder? And are you prepared to do the enormous amount of work in governing, which is always hard? And so I would suggest that everybody think about that carefully. And if the answer is, yeah, I'm prepared to do both of those, I'm prepared to do the work, then by all means, Boulder needs good candidates. Boulder needs excellent governors. And if you think you can be one of those, um, come on in, come on in. The water's warm. So those are the things I would suggest people consider as they ponder this decision.
A really great way of putting it, and true to a public servant's form and in public speaking, you encourage people to talk about their one reason or a reason, maybe not the one reason. Well, now you've begged the question, Mark. What was the reason? And you mentioned. Well, I'll just go with that. What was your reason for running, and how well have we
Well,
solved that problem?
the second time I ran, it was because Bob Yates took me out and got me drunk and convinced me to run. But the first time around, it was a more considered process. And it was because I was concerned that some of the development issues we're dealing with, and we're still dealing with, and we will continue to deal with them. There will be no end of debates and concerns over development issues. And, it's never, um, it can't be one or the other. It can't be there'll be no further development or let's turn this into Brooklyn. I've lived in Brooklyn. I don't want this to be Brooklyn. But somewhere in the middle is a place where those who are governing can make an impact. And I had prior experience in the business of real estate development. So I thought perhaps some of that experience could be well used on council. I'm not sure that I have, but I have attempted to do that.
Well,
And that
literally.
was what motivated me initially.
Well, and like you said, it's we don't want to turn Boulder into Brooklyn. Frankly, the water table is too high. We could never get a subway there in the first place. So I think we're safe on at least that front, but maybe fast tracks in
Okay,
2028, 2029.
that would work well. I thank you.
So, all right. So we're gonna move. We're gonna move now in chronological order in the opposite direction. I want to bring up our newest elected city council member, Mr. Kaplan, who really has brought in a focus on wildfire that our one of our other speakers here has helped bring into focus. But as a business leader and also as a public servant decided to stand up again as a public servant and got more votes than the other person, which is how you win in city council races or pretty much any election. And so, with that, Councilmember Kaplan, when you're ready, for same question, what's the one thing that you would want our viewers to take away as it relates to running for office and or governing, and build on that for a couple of minutes?
Sure. Thank you, Jonathan. Um, I think the biggest takeaway that I had from when I was running is I started out very nervous because, the point is you do come in with an issue, and my issue was wildfire, and I was passionate about that. But you have to learn so many different aspects of the city. And I mean, I lived here for 33 years and I thought I knew so much, and I knew a very small percentage of it. So as I'm speaking to people and as I'm learning, I think the most important thing I can tell somebody who's running is to be genuine, be yourself. People want to know how you think, not always necessarily where you're specifically going to land on an issue. They understood that, for me coming in, that I was learning and I was gaining information and I was talking to people. And I think reaching out to every side of the aisle, if you will, is really important to get all the perspectives because, um, to Mark and Leslie's point, you come in and you have a very, specific uh, topic that you're going for, but you are representing the people as a whole. You're not representing yourself anymore. And once you're in office, I would say one of my biggest challenges coming from the fire service is I was 100% operative. I saw a problem. I went out and I fixed it. I gathered a team together and I knew how to do it. Now I'm legislative. So you have to wait for these things to come to you. You can push them and you can ask for agenda items, but it's a little bit slower of a process. And it's really important to build coalitions with your council members. And I will say that every single one of my council members have been really welcoming and helpful, and I consider every single one of them an asset.
Well, and you've gone from putting out fires to lighting fires in people's hearts. So well done.
Thanks.
And I know, and thank you for the reminder to be genuine. I'm reminded of a story when Ken Salazar was first running for office. All the DC consultants said, "You can't have this guy wearing a cowboy hat." Like, and the campaign team came back and they're like, "Look, Ken started losing his hair at a young age. He's grown up on the farm. This is who he is." The voters will smell out the true, genuine people. And none of our council members wear cowboy hats, and that's probably a good thing because that's not who you guys are. I've seen some Birkenstocks, and I'm okay with that. So I'm going to move on now to our next council member. Is somebody who has really taken a thoughtful approach to many things, and that's probably because of his experience as a freelance astronomer. When you're shooting for the stars, you really have to, take everything, like Leslie said, you have to take everything into account, and has truly done that, and has also spent a lot of time educating the public on positions as well, and taking the time to not just listen, but make sure that our electorate is informed. So, without further ado, I want to introduce our council member, Matt Benjamin. Thank you for joining us.
My pleasure. It's great to be here with everybody. And Leslie, Mark, Rob, it's great to be here with you guys. And Alicia and John, as always, you guys are perfect in all the ways. So thanks for being here and thanks for hosting. Yeah, you want me to answer
Matt,
that same question?
same
Question. Let's do
question,
it.
same verse.
Yeah, so the answers that Mark and Leslie and Rob gave are perfect. In fact, sort of stole a bit, but let's evolve from that. I think there's two pieces that become quite clear. One is really have to collaborate. And when you're running on a campaign, you usually run because you have an idea or ideas of how to fix the thing, and it's got to be your way, or you think your way is right. That works when you're campaigning as an individual, but as soon as you join a body of nine, you have to have four other people at least agree with you to get anything done. And I think that's an important aspect of being on council or any governing body is you might have exactly how you think it should be, but if your council colleagues or whoever don't agree, then you might have to modify that or give up on a few points to get to that consensus of having at least four other people agree with you. And that's difficult. That's hard. But it's an important skill. Otherwise, you kind of sit on an island and you don't get anything done. And then you wonder, well, why aren't the eight other people doing as I say or listening to me? It's because you're not reaching out and finding ways of how they can be a part of that solution as well. So that is just something you learn that you have to do to be effective. Some come hardwired to do that. Some it takes a lot of work to do that. But that's a big challenge. And the other thing I'll just add is you will make very hard decisions that impact people's lives, and there's no way around it. You can have your issue and be like, "Oh, this is super easy. Like I'm just here to support open space. Like who doesn't love open space? Like that's easy." But on the dais, you will have to address really difficult questions and set difficult policy that could, and in many ways, be good for some, but could be harmful to others. And there's sometimes no way around that. And that is so difficult, but you've got to learn the tough skin and you've got to just be willing to sink deep into the analysis and the information and be willing to say what's in the greatest good of our community and find a way to get to that decision along with your colleagues. But there's no avoiding hard decisions that can make you stay up at night. There's just that's the reality of the work. So if you're not built for that, then something else. But it is a sobering first meeting when you make a really hard decision, and then you sort of go from there.
Yeah, I'm glad you brought up the hard decisions. Certainly, and thanks for building on what other people have brought up. I remember years into serving in office, I was staunchly against the death penalty, and when I was finally faced with being able to repeal the death penalty, which I did, I was still a hard decision because I knew people who lost family members, whose assailants were sitting on death row, and they thought that was the best option for justice, and I, with other people, were taking that away. And so even easy decisions, easy things in my mind became hard. I'm going to ask you just one follow-up question before we go to our next speaker, which is, uh, give me an example. It doesn't have to be the most hard, but give me an example of what was a tough decision. Maybe it was even a surprise that it became a tough decision for you.
Oh, a surprise for a tough decision. Well, I think, well, I mean, I think there's two of them. I think one was early on in my time on council, we passed gun violence prevention rules here in Boulder. That to me seems like an easy thing to do, but there's a lot of folks in our community who found that to be a fundamental challenge to the way they live. And they felt it in every fiber. And so when you have those conversations, I could disagree with them, but to see what you perceive as an easy decision to others cause harm. And that's hard to have that conversation. But the decision for me was easy because it was for me a matter of what's in the greatest good for safety. Another one I'll have to say more recently is the conversation on minimum wage and that sort of thing. I mean, there's supporting our workers, but then understanding the price pressure and cost and expense pressure that puts on our small businesses. Those things are in tension, and it's hard to reconcile that. There's no single one decision that's good for both right off the bat. And so you have to find that balance and figure out ways that you're not letting perfection be the enemy of good, or you're not letting one side get all of what they want and trying to allow both sides some balance. And that is really hard because you can never really truly find that perfect balance. And that's always hard because you can't make everybody happy in a decision. And that does affect everybody's lives, be it the workers making money, be it the businesses being able to also support their own workers and keep their businesses open. And when those things are in tension, that's really hard because that's the fabric of how our local economy thrives and what drives the sales tax revenue for our city. I mean, all those things are intertwined, and those are really, really hard decisions going in and coming out of those decisions.
Well, thank you for that, and it really humanizes the situation here. And I see some questions in the chat, and we're going to get to those questions. But in the meantime, what I want to do is I want to go to our next speaker, and thank you, Council Member Benjamin, for those two very stark and important examples. And with that, Boulder City Council is a unique body in many ways. A lot of people think, and Councilmember Kaplan talked a little bit about this. You He's in a legislative role. And the truth is going from operational to policy is a challenge. But let's talk about operational for a second. We're lucky to have our city manager here, who is there religiously on Thursday nights, but really every night. And so I want to thank Nuria Rivera-Vandermeid for being here today and taking the time to talk about what it is to manage a city and what the interactions with city council look like. And once again, I'm going to open with the same question. If there was one thing you want the viewers to take away today on what you have seen as a city manager, or what you would like people to know about as a city manager, what would it be? And can you build on that in the role that we're talking about here, talking about what it takes to run for city council?
Sure. Thanks so much, Jonathan. And I just appreciate the forum and everyone who serves and everybody who's interested in serving. It is not elected office is not a position that I would want to serve on myself. And so I'm really thrilled that there are people that are so dedicated to really want to step in and lean into what is not for the faint of heart. Um, I think a lot of what has been said is just so critical. The fact that as once you are elected, you now represent every single person in this city, and be thoughtful about what that looks like, right? I think others have alluded to, if you come in with one issue, it can be awfully frustrating, because if you want to move something forward, you have to get to five, right? 5 votes is what makes a policy decision move forward. And at its core, and what you want and what is your priority, how you want to serve community, you are dependent on getting to 5 votes, right? So it's really important then that you talk about collaboration and consensus and conversation in ways that don't, I'd be remiss if I didn't channel my inner lawyers here, in ways that don't go afoul of open meetings laws, but you can have individual conversations, and hopefully that can help you think as you're moving forward. I think Councilmember Kaplan alluded to it, is coming in knowing role. So many people come in and get frustrated because what they really want to do is operate. And we are not that form of government. We are a council management form of government. It's frankly one that I have had the pleasure to serve here and elsewhere and believe in. It is a way in which originally it was thought that city manager, sort of as CEO, and the council as its board of directors, really helps keep politics out of day-to-day operations. And I believe in that form of government. But if you are coming in and are from an activist heart, want to operate, it can be frustrating all of a sudden to realize that is hard thing, that the person that you can direct is the city manager and not all of staff, right? There's a reason for that as that moves forward. And then finally, I will say, just as an advice for those that are really thinking of it, John mentioned council priorities, I think is super critical. I don't know that people who are running think about that in advance. It is one of the reasons that we have moved the retreat a little bit later in Q1, because that really sets the tone for it's not the only thing that will get done in a city, but what will be the things that we elevate, that we bring to you on a consistent basis, that we give it a lot more daylight, and that we prioritize in our work moving forward. So thinking about what will that look like, and will you have enough support to create council priorities? And I always say that it depends. There's no magic number in 10. Sometimes it's 11, sometimes it could be 8, right? But what do you think about moving that forward? I think is really critical, and encourage you to think through that as you're going through this process.
Easy stuff. No, challenging stuff, indeed. And no, I think, you are certainly city manager's role is different. And I love the analogy of sort of the CEO board of directors. And so as somebody is embarking on their journey and thinking about running for office, maybe for the first time, I'm sure you've had more than a handful of council members, without betraying any confidence here, of course, come to you and sort of exasperated, going, oh my gosh, I can't believe you're asking me to handle this. And there are just sort of these surprises that happen. Well, I'm not asking for, well, how about this? Could you give us like maybe a word of caution and a word of
Mhm.
excitement that a council member, aspiring council member might want to hear?
Yeah, I actually find it all exciting, if I'm really honest with you. I love cities, and I think what I have seen in um, and now I've had the pleasure of serve with various council members here in Boulder, is such a thoughtful approach to governance. And through all of that, really thinking about community in mind. Now, we may all get there in different ways, right? And have different perspectives about it, but there is not a single council member that is not thinking about the good of community. And that by itself to me is exciting. I often lift up staff. I think we have an extraordinary staff and we are here to inform. That is the other thing that sometimes there's frustration on our end as well in terms of telling staff it is council who tells us the what. It is then our job to say what the how is. And if there are disagreements on that, it does not matter because once council makes a decision, it is our job to implement that decision and do it to the best of our ability. So I think there is excitement in being able to think about what what is it time for in a city? What can we think about? Is there change or is there status quo or is there tweaks? And then thinking about how do we move forward in a collective way. I think that is exhilarating. It does not come without its sometimes its cost of those hard decisions that Councilmember Benjamin was talking about, because there are times when an issue is very divisive and we are not of one mind in community. And those are really hard. It is our job as staff to try to lift up the information, the best information that we have. And that too can be frustrating. And we hear this from council when all the information that they may want, that community may ask for, is not at our fingertips. Sometimes we are thinking about future impacts, and I'd love to say I've got a magic 8 ball or a way in which to look into the future, and I can't tell all the impacts of a decision we'll make. But we will try our best to bring forward as much as information as we can.
Well, and once again, a very human process. Nothing is perfect, but that is what makes it exciting, exhilarating, sometimes heartbreaking, but it then brings it back to, the possibilities. And so, speaking of possibilities, let's try and bring up on the Zoom here all four of our panelists. And there's a couple of questions here that are sitting in the chat here. And two of them actually have a lot to do with each other. And so I'm going to ask them at the same time, and then to whomever would like to respond to any of our council members or city manager. This is about agreeing and disagreeing, which, I'll just say you see a lot of strange, I'm not going to say strange alliances, but unlikely alliances. The strange alliance would be maybe the cat that walked by if they were. I don't think we've seen an accidental like yes vote from a cat walking over a keyboard yet, but you see people who disagree one day and then agree the next week, right? And you see people who always get along and really have it out over something. So how often does city council agree versus disagree, and what's the decision model? And is there an official process followed by the council when there is a division of opinion on a particular issue? So it's a loaded question, but to whomever wants to take sort of a first stab at this, um, how often do you guys disagree? And how often do y'all then is there a process that y'all follow as it relates to these things? Don't all speak at once.
I'll take a crack since it was quieter off the bat.
I love it.
Well, technically, council always agrees. It's just a matter of which combination of council members come together to vote at least yes or no as a body of five. But more seriously, Mark and I do a death match in the parking lot if we disagree. That's how we settle our score. That's the West Coast and me and the East Coast and him. So we fight over Yankees or Dodgers in that front. No, I mean we disagree all the time, and I think where community gets this sort of, does council agree or disagree or odd bedfellows kind of thing, is because when you run, you're usually aligned with a particular slate that has a particular point of view, and then when you're on council, it's somehow assumed that that is the viewpoint you're beholden to. I don't know anybody that I've served with on council that quote unquote is beholden to any of those groups. And when they get on council, sometimes they vote against what that group may have said that they wanted to have done. I have seen that repeatedly by a number of my colleagues. And so I think, to Nuria's point and others, you end up representing the whole city and you get elected because you're thoughtful. And when you're thoughtful and you're faced with the information that's in front of you, you make the decision that is best. And sometimes you end up collaborating with people you may not have thought you would on the campaign trail. Once you're into council, the campaign stuff is out the window, and you've got 8 other colleagues that you just work with, and you're trying to find a way to get to 5 votes, but hopefully 9 total votes to just get stuff done to improve our community. So, it after like that first year, there's really no strange bedfellows. You're just kind of getting the job done, and you're working with your colleagues on the greatest good.
All right, other thoughts? And once again, feel free to disagree. I think that's what we're talking about here. But feel free, anyone on our panel, to build on that for a second.
I'll jump in. Other than his allegiance to the Dodgers, Matt is quite correct. We disagree, there are disagreements all the time, but um, for instance, I have found this to be a very collegial council. This is not my first council, but this is fairly collegial. Uh, to my utter shock, I have become good friends with a couple of members of council who are probably least aligned with my views on a number of matters, but I've come to respect them for their intelligence and for their dedication, and their willingness to work on specific issues with me. And I think that's what it's supposed to be. That doesn't mean every vote's going to be 9-0. It's not going to happen. And there will be votes that are much closer than that. But we tend to, if you start from a position of mutual respect, uh, you can work through a lot of different issues, and I think that we do. Um, and I'm at a point where I value um, my colleagues greatly, and again, it's not a function of whether they agree with me on one issue or another. It's um, I have told other candidates in the past, it, it's not important if you get on council, whether you agree with me, it's how do you think about the issues? And do you think about them carefully and deeply? And if you come up with a point of view that differs from mine, I'm okay with that. Uh, I did not get elected to be the emperor of Boulder. I became elected to be a member of council of Boulder, and that entails working with other people. And I have found the quality of the people I am working with to be quite high. So, Matt is correct in his characterization of how you have to go about your business, and the fact that we can not always agree with one another, but still have some mutual respect for one another. And then the next issue, maybe the alignment will be a little different. And, maybe I'll get Matt to understand the superiority of the Yankees over the Dodgers. Not likely, but, one can hope.
Well, and as we know, there's only one emperor of Boulder. That is the almighty prairie dog. But but
I'll get
perhaps
started on that, please.
perhaps Leslie. Oh, I got some looks there. It's like we're disagreeing. Leslie, do you want to chime in?
Yes, I do. And I will say one of the best things about getting off city council and mayor, people said, what do you want to say that you wouldn't be able to say before? And I said, I hate prairie dogs. But I was going to say that I am increasingly aware of a practice, and I think Nuria made reference to it, that I don't believe we used very much in the past. And for me, the past was quite some time ago. I am aware of council members talking to each other outside of the council meetings themselves. And there's an awful lot of reference I hear to, well, I was talking to so and so, and I agreed on this and that, outside of the public eye. I think that probably facilitates decision making, but I think we do need to be sure that council members are aware of the role of doing things in public and not always just behind the scenes. it really is not only the law, but I
Mhm.
think it really is a good practice that sometimes we can err on the side of trying to facilitate decision making or move things along. And I think council members have to be very aware of the role of the public in that. The other thing I would mention that I did as mayor, which I thought was really important, because sometimes in a council discussion, the conversation swirls and people are offering all sorts of ideas and opportunities for consensus. Is mayor, I always restated the motion before a vote, because what I found was that people would say afterwards, oh, wait, I thought we voted on this, and it really turned out to be interpreted in another way. I think that both that rigor and remembering that it's a public body are things that elected officials really need to keep in mind, and I think our council does a good job on that.
Yeah, I just want to double down, Leslie. I think you're absolutely right. We do a lot of training. John mentioned onboarding on making sure that public business is done publicly, right? Doesn't mean that there are topics that you want to exchange ideas upon generally, but the specifics of the conversation and what's in play and what you will be voting on has to happen in the public setting and in the public forum. So we're very cautious about that. But I do think that having conversations with colleagues, building collegiality, understanding where each other's coming from, I think has been super helpful. And I see that with this council all the time because it facilitates what Mark was talking about, that maybe on this vote didn't go my way, but maybe there's another one. And each issue is individual,
Yeah.
right? Looking at it fresh, looking at it new. I think this council does a really, really good job of that.
Good to hear.
Can I just add, just for the listeners who may not know some of those rules that Leslie was pointing out and those differentiators, just maybe want to clarify that, two elected officials can talk to each other. Now, they can't obviously like make votes and or anything because there's no quorum. But a good example is like I'll call Rob and be like, hey, I want to learn more about wildfire. And with his expertise, that's a conversation that two electeds can have. What can't happen is Mark, Rob, and myself getting together and talking about the policies or the issues on the agenda that are coming up this Thursday. So that would violate open meetings laws, and so that would be inappropriate and illegal. So it is sort of a balance, and Leslie's right. We have to be sensitive to the public forum that is required of us. But it does help us actually move the conversation and have a deeper conversation in those public meetings. If on those one-on-ones you learn a little bit of depth of perspective and maybe some lived experience that your colleague has on an issue that informs you a little bit deeper on how to assess the information that staff is giving you. So there's a balance there that I think Leslie was referring to, but just to clarify that there are clear laws and our city attorney is very good at making sure that we follow them to a T.
This is such a rich conversation. Rob, I'm going to give you the last word because I do want to get to our last panel, and we'll take it from there. We'll take it from there. So, Rob,
Sure.
last word here.
Just for the new folks that are listening, I do think it's really valuable for me as a new council member to have one-on-ones with my fellow council members and people outside of council that, like Leslie, people that have this experience, and it's just a wealth of knowledge and wisdom. But also having these one-on-one conversations with council members helps me personally to sometimes just frame the question and frame what are we specifically being asked, because sometimes it can be a little bit nuanced. And also, I just like to see how different people think. And then even after the vote, I'll call them and I'll ask them what their thought process was. And it gives me a richer context for every vote that comes up.
Mhm.
You would think by the amount of comity that you're seeing and collegiality that you're seeing that all these folks agree with each other on every issue. And I'll just guarantee you, I wouldn't have a job if that was the case. And so uh, this is a genuine interaction on what this process really looks like. So thank you for your perspectives. I do want to move on to our last panel, and then we'll see if there's more questions that come out about whether the Dodgers, Yankees, Rockies, or Red Sox are the best. But more importantly, we're here to talk about the press. And so I want to thank our press panel here for being here. We have representatives from the Daily Camera, BizWest, and Boulder Reporting Lab. And really for each of our folks here, I've made the mistake of having two folks named John and CEO here named John. So I'm going to do my best to use the first and last names here. But let's actually start with the Daily Camera. We've got John Vahlenkamp here. If you want to tell us a little about your publication, what it is that elected officials, or excuse me, candidates before they become elected officials can expect, what you would like to see from them, and once again, let's go with what is the one thing you wish candidates knew when they first ran, that would help them and you in getting their message out.
Yeah, I'll start with the Daily Camera. We're a 7 day a week print publication and effectively a 24/7 online presence as well. Yeah, I take it that our job is to inform the community. So uh, if you want to be a candidate for office, if you want to be known to us, and we want to make sure that we'll let our readers know about you. I may forget some of the questions you asked, Jonathan, but basically, when you verified your eligibility to be a candidate, let us know. We want you to reach out to us. I can give you an email address, which at some point, maybe, I don't know if there's a way to show that on the screen. It's pretty easy. It's newsroom@dailycamera.com. So reach out to us. Let us know. A few simple things to be ready to do. Have a photo of yourself. Make sure make sure it's in focus. Make sure it's cropped in on your face. I don't want you at the beach in the background. So, something that's easy to show who you are. 500K or a greater file size is best. A JPEG, things like that. Very simple logistical things to be prepared for, because we want to see your face, as do the people who might want to vote for you. The other thing, I've got a list of things, but really ultimately what it comes down to is be reachable, be accessible. I think this not only works for the press, it probably would work if you ever become a council member. You're going to have to be accessible. You're going to have to be reachable. And then ultimately let us know how we can contact you. Likely, if you are a city candidate, you're going to be working with our city reporter. That's James Berkey. So ultimately, what you'll want to do is make sure that he's got your contact information, that he's given you his contact information. And that's something that can happen once you announce to us that you're a candidate. What else? I'll stop there. I may have some other items to give you, but I know we have a couple of other panelists, and I'd like to give them a chance.
And John, it looks like you're in the newsroom right now.
I am. Yeah, this is where it happens. We're in our newsroom, which is in Longmont. We're in a shared office space here, and yeah, I've got a west-facing window, and I'm pretty well shaded.
You know what? If we took a headshot right now, I would accept it into the paper. So thanks for joining us from work is really where I wanted to go with that. Let's jump to BizWest and Lucas High here. You know, BizWest, really a newspaper of record when we're talking about not just business but community issues as well, from that business perspective. And sometimes an unknown, underutilized resource for many candidates. And so, Lucas, why don't you join us? Tell us a little bit about what is that one thing or things that you wish candidates knew ahead of time, and build on what John was telling us.
Sure, yeah, absolutely. Thanks, Jonathan, for having me, and equally as importantly, thanks for everyone for attending. If you run for office and win, great. If you run for office and lose, great. But just kind of being here is commendable in and of itself. So I appreciate everyone taking the time. So BizWest is the business journal of the Boulder Valley in northern Colorado. So we cover Boulder County, Broomfield County, Weld County, and Larimer County. Obviously, Boulder is one of our key areas of coverage. We cover a range of industries, everything from startups and technology to agriculture and energy to brewing and cannabis, but what we cover a lot of actually is government. This is a great conversation. I appreciate it. And what we don't do a ton of, though, is sort of horse race coverage in the lead up to elections. So we don't typically offer endorsements. We don't often do candidate profiles. However, once you get into office, the work that you do is something that is critical to our coverage and to our readers. The business community, I think, is sort of self-evident by the fact that the chamber is hosting this particular event, is keenly interested in the work that our city government does. So we cover Boulder City Council, we cover planning boards, we cover CU region boards, and we do the same for all of the municipalities in that 4-county region. And in terms of what I would recommend for candidates to know as you're running and preparing to take office is really just sort of understand your mandate. And by that, I don't mean understand, what your political platform is or your policy framework. Understand what the job is. Understand what the sort of the a legal framework of what a city council person does, what a city council does in the context of other government organizations, whether they be state, federal, county. Understand what you can and can't do. Understand how city staff can help you. Understand how city attorneys can work with you, and understand how to interact with the public and just sort of be available and willing to chat with folks.
So no, I think that's a really great point, and so hopefully you've made it out of the newsroom. But if you haven't, thank you for taking the time
No,
to meet with.
I am in my home newsroom that also doubles as my 9-month-old daughter's nursery. So if you hear any squealing behind me, that's baby Sonny back there.
You know what? There would be no politics without just a little bit of tears. So thank you for bringing that
So
dose
far,
of
she's
reality with
smiling
us.
and waving.
Okay. Well, you know what? That's even better. We'll do the kissing babies portion. Actually, that stopped after COVID,
Good
but
point.
very important for politics. Last but not least, I know we're almost short on time, but we're just on time right now. But we've got just one more panelist here. I saved the best for last with Boulder Reporting Lab that takes a unique and sometimes more in-depth approach to reporting. But building on what our other panelists have said, what are the takeaways or a major takeaway that you would want candidates to embark on when they're reaching out to you and to gain the publicity that they need to get their message out to the voters? And thank you, Lucas, for getting our youngest constituent on the camera.
Well, hello, y'all. I'm a reporter with Boulder Reporting Lab, and we're a nonprofit. We started in 2021, and we mostly cover the city of Boulder and Boulder County to some extent. Um, I would say probably the biggest thing I'd want the candidates to know is to just like reach out to us early, ideally before you like make a big announcement. That kind of gives us time to prepare and potentially write a story in advance. And I think, the same goes for other newsrooms as well. I think it just helps us to be prepared for when you make the announcement. I'd also say, yeah, like if you want to talk before, make sure we have your contact info and yeah, just make sure you can be reached.
So I know not all of you are actually. I'm going to ask two questions of this panel, and they don't have to be long answers on these things. But the first one is this. I know, speaking as someone who ran for office and then served for a long time, periodically I had colleagues that got very frustrated because they weren't getting published enough in the paper. You talk about being reachable, being accessible. Sometimes some elected officials make themselves too accessible and too reachable. I had one colleague who literally walked by the press table and said, "If you ever want to comment on anything that ever happens, just come talk to me." And that's one way of doing it. But if someone has an opinion piece they want to write, talking about their candidacy. How many letters are you going to print in an election cycle? Is it just one or is it multiple? And what would make what are the do what is one do and what is one don't? And I'm just going to go backwards here. John Herrick, why don't we start with you first on a do and a don't to getting your word out?
Yeah, I think in terms of opinion pieces, we don't publish opinion pieces from candidates. We will from other people on issues related to the election. Um, but yeah, we're not the best platform for that. We do sell ads in our newsletters. So if you want to just like put an ad out there, we do that. Don't reach out to me, reach out to Stacy about that. And I would say also, like, you want to get the word out, we do questionnaires as part of our election coverage, and we try to get responses from every candidate. So hopefully within that questionnaire, if you answer the questions, hopefully that gets the word out on where you stand.
Love it. All right, I'm going to go from John to John here. So, John Vahlenkamp, same question.
Yeah. We also do not allow candidates to self-endorse on our opinion page. So don't plan on doing that. However, we do accept letters of endorsement from others, up to 300 words. I don't know that there's necessarily a limit on the number of endorsement letters we would write. I would leave that to Gary Garrison, our opinion page editor. I would say this: I've done opinion page work in the past. If you have people endorsing for you, don't hand them a template and say, fill in the blanks in this template and send it in. That's probably pretty quickly. I figured Gary would spot that and send those letters back. So make sure that they're the words of the people who support you, not words that you put in their mouth and then have them sent in. We also do, leading up to the election, we do Q&As with candidates. So in those Q&As, we ask some biographical information. So likely in this fall, what we're going to do is give the candidate an opportunity to have to make a statement about themselves, their background, their experience, and then we will ask questions regarding particular topics of interest to the community. And you can buy ads. That's one way to get the message out as you want it to appear. I think that covers pretty much everything. Certainly, like we've all said, know us, keep in touch, make sure that you're known.
I love it. No, I was going to ask about ad space, and so I'm glad both of you touched on that. Lucas, last but not least, from BizWest perspective, any other do's and don'ts?
Well, I will mention the topic of submitted pieces. We certainly do take those. We don't typically take submitted pieces related to individual candidacies, but we certainly will welcome op-eds or columns related to particular issues. Although I will have to say you might have to fight with John Taylor for column space. He is kind enough to write a column for us every month. So if he's willing to give up a little bit of his column inches, then we might accept somebody's submitted pieces.
And you also and do you also take advertising?
We do. We don't. We have a fairly a fairly strong firewall between editorial and sales, so I don't know a ton about our ad policies. I know that we don't typically get a ton of candidate ads, but I don't think we have a specific prohibition against that. So if folks are interested, let me know. I'd be glad to pass you along to the right person that could answer that for you. And John mentioned his newsroom's newsroom-wide email address. I should mention ours. It's just news@bizwest.com.
Excellent. Well, it's like you're public communications officials, and you know how to make things just easy and accessible to get there. And John Vahlenkamp, great points, really all made. And no form letters for endorsements. Although I'm going to now write a political Mad Libs thing where I'm like, I blank endorse blank candidate because insert adjective, insert noun, and just see what comes up out of that one. So you've inspired me.
That might be so much fun. We would publish it. Yeah.
I look forward to our collaboration. So I'm going to close on this because we've got only a few minutes left. I'm going to do a lightning round for our candidate, or excuse me, our council member panel and city manager. And this is the question. It's a two-part question, math question. So hang on to your hats here. How many city council candidate questionnaires did you have to fill out in your last election cycle, approximately? How many candidate questionnaires did you have to fill out? And approximately how many hours a week have you dedicated to running for office and serving? And for Nuria, similar question. No, for Nuria, similar question. How many hours a week do you see city council members putting in? And so I'm going to start with Nuria because I've really only got one question for her because she's filled out 0 questionnaires, but did have to apply for this job. So Nuria, How many hours a week are you seeing on average if you were to estimate our city council members as a whole are putting in?
Oh, it's tremendous. It's much more than a part-time job, I will say. Which to Mark's point, I don't know that we pay you all enough for what you do. Some folks thought that it's like a 20-hour job. I see council members putting in 40 hours a week, sometimes depending on the issue. And if they're running, it's even more because going out and speaking to community is huge. So it is a full-time and then some during a political candidate running season. And thankfully, zero council questionnaires for me.
No, no, but thank you for filling out the application of the city of Boulder. And so that was arguably, it's a different job. It pays a little bit more, but I think you put in some 40-hour days. So I'm going to go in no particular order here. Actually, I am going to go in an order here. I'm going to go from most recent to least recent, and so, Councilmember Kaplan, how many questionnaires did you have to fill out, and about how many hours a week are you putting as candidate and now as council member?
I don't remember exactly how many questionnaires, but I'll say a dozen. And they ranged from taking a couple hours to a couple days because there's so much research involved, depending on what the subject matter was. And then you're preparing for an interview or you're preparing for a forum. And it was a complete new normal for me. You say yes to everything, you go to everything, you talk to everybody, and your life is 100% about running. Um, I was told that once you're on council, it gets a lot easier. They lied to me.
Well, politicians have been known for telling the truth. But no, no, I'm going to move on to the lightning round here. Councilmember Wallach, for you on the flip side, how often, how many candidate questionnaires did you fill out the last round, and in about how many hours a week are you dedicating?
I actually counted this up at one point. I don't remember the exact number, but it was in the 20s, getting on towards 30. I remember filling out a particularly onerous questionnaire on a Saturday night. I hit send. I was about to go get a beer to celebrate, and another one came in. And I started screaming at the computer. Um, it was very onerous. As a serving member of council, I would say in the 30-hour range, with some weeks being more and occasionally some weeks being less. Um, but it is much, much more than a part-time job. Um, uh, Although I might disagree with Nuri, we might actually be overpaid, but that's um, I,
We'll leave that up to the voters.
yeah.
That's okay. We'll leave that up to the voters.
But
So.
it's a very, very onerous um, assignment. Not onerous, time-consuming assignment, and you have to be ready for that.
So, all right, and Councilmember Benjamin, same questions. How many questionnaires? How much time? How many hours a week?
Yeah, the questionnaires have gotten egregious because Google Form is so accessible these days. Anyone could fill out a questionnaire and send it off, and you don't want to disrespectfully not answer it. So when I first ran in 2017, there were maybe only 10 or 12 questionnaires. Now it's up to like 30. So it is an onerous consumption of time, especially considering that probably 75% of the questions are the same, or it's the just slightly different version of the same question, which is a bummer because you'd like to be out knocking on doors, talking to community members, but you're spending, 2 to 5 hours per questionnaire, and that adds up. So that's an unfortunate evolution. Maybe there's a way to consolidate. I do remember there was a time where Richard Valenti, I think, had one questionnaire that all used, and it was a just monolithic questionnaire. You'd put like 20 hours into one, everybody would use the same questionnaire, and everyone would go on their way. But maybe we live in different times. Yeah, I spend probably about on average probably about 30 or so hours a week on council. Early on, you spend more because you're just drinking out of a fire hose, then you get kind of efficient. I would say if you're spending less than 20 hours a week, at least for me personally, I don't feel I'm putting in enough time to do quality work. I just that's me. So I always there's been times for other reasons I've fallen back below 20, and I feel like guilty and self-shame that I'm literally just not prepared. So 30 is that number, but to Nuria's point, it's easy that some weeks you can get well over 40 into 50 depending on the issues or what have you. So it's a balance.
All right, last one here, Mayor Durgin. Questionnaires and then yeah, hours per week.
You know, my time on council was so long ago that we didn't have questionnaires, as I recall. I think that's, as Rob said, a new normal. And certainly time spent as mayor, probably close to 30 to 40 hours a week. And we were not paid. And so I had a full-time job as well. But I certainly think that what you've heard from the sitting council members is a real warning about knowing your limitations and know whether you can put in the time to be a really good council member. Is time that each candidate ought to consider for themselves.
Well, and I wish we could continue this. Perhaps what we'll do is move into a graduate school of political knowledge following the College of Political Knowledge because there's such a wealth of information to be had here. And you know, I'm gonna close really on this is this is not by any means a scared straight component. There's so many people. You all have campaign teams. I see from some of your head nods, people who care about the issues, your issues, volunteer their time, and you're driven by those folks and by those issues. And so thank you again for taking time out of your evening on what has turned into a very nice day to be part of the College of Political Knowledge this year and really truly provide the consideration for our community that they need to embark on. So instead of having me close out, there's one person here at the Boulder Chamber I did not introduce at the beginning that I would like to close us out tonight, and that is our CEO and President, John Taylor. Take it away.
Sure. Really quickly, first of all, I'm going to commend my teammate Jonathan on his moderation skills. Kept this humorous and light throughout, but it's a serious topic. And I also note that I jotted down a couple of key phrases that were brought up just in the conversation: collaborate, fairness, community, kumbaya. These are not terms that you would hear in most legislative bodies. And I think we're uniquely lucky in Boulder that we not only have a group of individuals that come together to serve many hours, commit a great deal of their time to service to our community, but it's the nature of the collaboration that I know the chamber enjoys with our elected leadership, and just appreciate, as Jonathan said, the commitment of time toward the political process and the legislative process. So I look forward to the election season getting underway, and just thank all of the folks who are engaged in that and to our panelists. So we'll see you out there on the campaign trail.
And let's give everyone a virtual round of applause, and we'll see you in less stormy weather in person.